Hi 7th graders, today you will be working on lesson 7.1.6, creating integer coefficients efficiently. Make sure you have your book out and you've shown your teacher your homework. You can open your book to page 406 or lesson 7.1.6 on the CPM ebook. So you can pause the video and then play again when you're ready. 7.1.6, how can I solve complicated equations? Creating integer coefficients efficiently. In this lesson, you will continue to develop strategies to rewrite a complicated equation into an equivalent equation that is more familiar and easier to solve. The first problem we'll do together is 763. Sherry volunteers over the summer in a veterinarian's clinic. The doctor has told Sherry to determine the correct dose of medicine to give to the cat, Sweetie, who weighs 9.5 pounds. The dosage in milliliters for a 9.5 pound cat is given by x in the formula below. 2x over 3 plus 4/3 equals 10/3. Sherry has never solved such a complicated equation before. She thought about how Janice visualized algebra tiles in problem 752 and wondered if that could help. Sherry visualized the following diagram. So when I look at our diagram, I see 2/3 of an x, and that's showing only 2 parts of the total 3 parts that she split x into, plus 4/3. So 4/3 is 1 1/3, so she has 1 unit cube plus 1/3 of another unit cube. And then that's equal to 10/3, so she has 10 pieces of broken up into thirds, her unit tiles. It says help Sherry rewrite the equation with integers. Determine the correct dose of medicine to give to Sweetie. Okay, so when I look at this equation, for me it's easier to look at this equation up here. And when I look at this, I notice that each fraction is over 3. So in order to solve this, I'm going to multiply each fraction by 3 to get rid of the denominator of 3. And I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So I know that 3 as a whole number is the same as 3 over 1. So I'm going to change each of those to fractions. Okay, and I'd like you to pause the video now and write out this equation if you haven't already, because I'd like you to make sure you have this work in your notebook. Okay, so if you notice, I have 3 over 3 in each of these. I have a numerator 3 and a denominator 3. And with that, I can simplify each of those because I know 3 over 3 is the same as 1. So I'm going to simplify each of those. So now this one would be 2x over 1, this would be 4 over 1, this would be 10 over 1, and all of those I know would be equal. So then I would be left with 2x plus 4, so this should be the next thing you're writing down, equals 10. So hopefully you see that I have 3 over 3 reduces to 1, and each of those happens. So then I have just my numerators left, because multiplying by 3 gets rid of the 3 as my denominator. So now I'm going to determine the correct dosage of medicine to give to Sweetie. So I'm going to get x by itself. In order to do that first, I have to get rid of whatever I'm adding or subtracting. So instead of adding 4, I'll subtract 4, and that will create a 0 pair. Positive 4 and negative 4 is a 0 pair. So I'm going to be left with 2x. And then 10 minus 4 equals 6. Make sure you're doing this in your notebook with me. And then to get rid of 2 times x, I'm going to divide by 2 so that I only have 1x left. 2 divided by 2 is 1. And then 6 divided by 2 equals 3. So the correct dosage to give to Sweetie is 3. And if you remember, they said it was in milliliters. So it'll be X equals 3 milliliters. Okay, pause the video if you need to finish writing that down. Otherwise, I'll move on to the next problem. 764, examine the equation below. So I have x over 4 minus 5/6 equals 7. So I'd like you to first copy this down in your notebook, pause the video, and then play again once you have that copied. Okay, so I'm going to rewrite this so that I have more room to work, because A says that I need to multiply each term by 4, and what happened? Do any fractions remain? Okay, so if I multiply each by 4, I'm going to multiply x over 4 times 4, and like we talked about in the last problem, 4 is the same as 4 over 1, so then I multiply this one by 4 over 1, and then this one I'll just multiply by 4. Okay. So here I see that I have 4, if I multiply before x over 4, so that would be the same thing as 1x, because 4 over 4 is the same as 1. So I end up with x. If you're not understanding how I'm doing that, make sure you pause the video and ask your teacher. And then I'm still subtracting, and then I have 5 times 4 is 20 over 6 times 1 is 6, and I can't simplify because I don't have the same number as the numerator and denominator. So I'm just going to write what the fraction is when I multiply. So 5 times 4 is 20, 6 times 1 is 6, equals 4 times 7 is 28. So if I go back to A, I'm going to answer the question. It says, what happened? And if you look, now x is not a fraction anymore. So x is not a fraction. And do any fractions remain? Be yes. 26 is still a fraction, remains. Okay, so we were able to undo the first fraction, but I still have a fraction for my second term. All right, now B. If you have not already done so, decide how you can change your result from part A so that no fractions remain. Then solve the resulting equation. All right, so now I need to get rid of the 6. I'm going to change my color again. So to get rid of the 6, like I did here, to get rid of the 4, I multiply by 4. So here I'm going to multiply by 6. And 6 I know is the same as 6 over 1. But if I do it to that problem, or that part of my equation, I have to do it to every part. I have to make each part 6 times bigger. Okay, so here I'm left with 6x minus, and then 6 over 6. Those simplify because that's what my goal was. And then I'd be left with 20 over 1, which is the same as 20. And then 28 times 6, I'm going to use my calculator. 28 times 6 equals 168. So I'm going to go back here.
Josh Hewen to the office. Josh Hewen to the office.
Sorry about that. Okay, so now it wants me to solve the resulting equation. So I need to get x by itself. So to undo subtracting 20, I'm going to add 20. To add 20 to the other side also. So negative 20 and a positive 20 equals a 0 pair. So on the left, I'm left with 6x. And on the right, 168 plus 1 plus 20 would be 188. Okay, now I need to divide both sides by 6 because I need to get rid of my 6 and my 6x, and to undo 6 times x, I'll divide by 6, so those will simplify. And then I have to do 188 divided by 6. I'll go back to my calculator. 188 divided by 6 equals 31.3 repeating. So on the left, I'm going to have to continue down here. X equals 31.3. It's repeating. All right. So take a minute and finish that in your notebook if you haven't done so already, and then we're going to move on to C. C says multiplying x over 4 minus 5, 6 equals 7 by 4 did not eliminate all of the fractions. What could you have multiplied by to get rid of all of the fractions? Explain how you got your answer and write the equivalent equation that has no fractions. So when I think about this one, I see that I multiplied by 4 to start, and then I multiplied by 6, and instead of multiplying by them separately, I can multiply by them at the same time. And what I mean by that, I could do 4 times 6 is 24, and then both of those would get rid of my two fractions because it's the same as multiplying by 4 and multiplying by 6. So I'm going to multiply 4 times 6 is 24, and that should get rid of both. So let's try it. So start by rewriting this equation again. I'm going to pause the video, and you should pause the video too, and then play once you have this equation here rewritten again. Okay, so now that I have my equation written, I'm going to multiply both sides by 24 like we talked about. Okay, and 24 is the same as 24 over 1. I have to multiply this one by 24 over 1. So you should do the same thing on yours, and this one I can multiply by just 24 because it's not a fraction. All right, so then if I scroll down here, 24 times x equals 24x, and then 4 times 1 equals 4, and then 5 times 24, I'm going to do that on my calculator, 25. What was it? 5 times 24. It's 120. So I have 120 over 6 equals 7 times 24 is 168. All right, so now I'm going to do the math to get those fractions not fractions anymore. So here I have 24 divided by 4, and hopefully you know that's 6. So then I have 6x minus 120 divided by 6. 6 goes into 12 twice, and then I still have the 0, so that would be 20 equals 168. Okay, so then it said to solve the resulting equation from part C, and that's the same answer we got here, so we've already solved that equation. But this is an easier way instead of multiplying by each separately. It says solve the resulting equation from part C, so we did that, and we got 31.3 repeating, and check your solution in the original equation. So I'm going to exchange 31.3 for x, and then solve to see if it equals 7. So I'm going to pause the video and rewrite 31.3 as my x, and then we're going to solve it together. So pause the video and rewrite that, please. So x is 31.3 repeating, and then I did the math, 31.3 repeating divided by 4, so I can't do it exact, but it's about 7.825 minus 5/6 is the same as 0.83 repeating equals 7. So you see 0.825 is about 0.83 repeating, and that's what it would be if I was able to do the repeating on my calculator. So this does equal 7, about 7. So this is about 7. equals 7.